How do you go about asking your wife for what you need? How do you go about asking your wife for what you need? If you said that over and over again, at what point do you stop thinking, man, there's no relationship. This guy just thinks his wife is a freaking genie in a bottle, right? Yeah. Relationship means there's two ways going on. One of the biggest things that we don't do is shut up and listen.
Welcome to Savage Servant Podcast. My name is Nick.
My name is Jason. Today we have with us Matt Beaudreau. Me and Matt met a couple years ago trying to figure out just the best way for me to educate my daughter, and doing some different men's work. And Matt does all sorts of things in the men's workspace and has helped me along the way too. So I've asked Matt on today. He's been a help in my life, so I know that you got some good insights, but we want to kind of hear about where you started and just kind of the background of your faith. But let's start kind of just, if somebody doesn't know who you are, going to give a quick synopsis of what you're doing now.
Yeah, you bet, man. I'll give the 30,000 foot overview. And I remember, that was a big event that we met at, but I remember very clearly speaking with you. I remember exactly where we were in the lobby when we were speaking after the event. I remember what you were wearing. I remember you very, very clearly out of, there was a couple of guys that stood out in that way, but I remember speaking to you very clearly, man. So it's cool to see stuff come, full circle that way. The 30,000 foot overview, I tell people I'm a career educator. It's the best way to put it. I had turned down a job at the White House coming out of college, which put me in this trajectory of not knowing what I was going to do. Had a few odd jobs here and there. And oddly enough, these odd jobs were the path. I didn't know it, but were the path to what I'm doing now. And so ultimately I landed at Stanford University. Worked at Stanford for quite a while, which is where I got to see some of what I call the game of school from the inside. Was there for quite a bit, and that led me to being a public school teacher and a public school administrator and a private school teacher and a private school administrator. All those gave me the background that I needed to know that school was not my thing, nor is it the thing for anybody. As you start diving down what school is meant for, it is not meant for human beings to grow. And as I discovered that, again, kind of playing the game from the inside and doing the research and asking the questions, I decided my young heroes, my own kids, weren't going to be going there. So I had to build something different. So simultaneously, I started building schools that I wanted my kids to go to and that I would open up to other human beings. And it also organically launched a speaking career where I was working with the top organizations in the world and traveling and doing 70, 80 keynotes all over the world for a number of years while I was building these schools. So I got to go work with, Lockheed Martin and Caterpillar and American Eagle and Amazon and Google and Netflix and Microsoft. And you name it. I got to hear from them what they weren't seeing from young people and what they wish they saw. And I got to help the organizations, but mostly I got to take that information back and bring it to the young heroes that I got to serve at the schools I was building. So helped build some schools. I launched a few myself. I helped entrepreneurs launch almost 300 at this point. Partnered with my good friend Tim Kennedy to launch a mentorship program for young men, which is now branched out, and we have men, and we're going to do ladies as well, and start doing another brand of schools that we feel really excited about. So that's a whole lot of information in a short amount of time, and we can dive into any and all of it that you want to.
That is impressive, to say the least. I think you're completely right about school. It's not a place you go to grow, and it definitely doesn't teach you much in the way of having to pursue your dreams in life. I think it teaches you how to be a 9 to 5 and to not go down that entrepreneur route. What was the initial thing for you that said, I don't agree with this at all? This does not make sense in growth for my life, for my kids' life, or anybody that I care about.
Yeah. It was kind of these two things that came together. When I refer to school, I refer to it as a game, right? And I always talk about the fact that school and education are vastly different. And I always preface these conversations saying, look, if you are a good human being who is in the school system, you're working there, you're a teacher, you're an administrator, man, I'm on your side. I've got nothing bad to say against you. I support you. We need good humans in this system. because there are still some young people who are not going to see any better human being than they do when they go to school and meet those teachers, because they don't have it at home. Right. So I admire them. I want them there. That said, my contention is always with the system itself. So it was really two things that came together. One, seeing patterns early on. I remember being 4 years old. I remember being 4 years old in kindergarten. I started early. I remember sitting at a table. I remember Mrs. McShane was my teacher. She was from Australia. She had a really rad accent, and we had been going on for a couple of weeks. And she says, "Okay, we're going to do. I can't do a Russian or a Australian accent, so I'm not going to try." But she started saying, "Look, we're going to group you guys together at these various tables, right?" So she said, "Matt, you're going to sit right here." And I remember watching, and she had different colors that she was naming each table in each group. And I went, "Okay, well, that's the group that needs the most help, right? Is the blue group or whatever. And the green group needs the next amount of help. So they're going to send, there's a helper that was going to kind of go over there. They're going to kind of let us go on our own because we're the red group and they're putting the best readers right here." Okay, I get it. I see what's going on. I remember coming to that conclusion. And I remember again very clearly at 8 years old going, I've seen nothing but a game for the last few years and I know how to play it. So I'll get my straight A's. This whole school thing is super easy. And it wasn't because I was extraordinarily intelligent. It was because I understood how to see patterns. That's one of the very few gifts that I have. I have very few. I suck at most things, but I can see patterns very, very well. And I always could. So I figured out how to play that game. So I never got anything less than A's. Not because I was smart, because I knew how to play school. So then when I graduate, I'm really good at sports. I'm really good at girls. I'm really good at playing school, but that makes me useless in the world. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I'm like, I guess I'll go to college. Well, I go to college and I got better at sports. I got better at girls. I still got straight A's and I still had no idea who I was. So I had seen all of that stuff for myself. Right. And so then as I'm going into the system and I'm trying to naively at that point go, okay, well, if I do something from the inside out, I can help the young kids like me, and I can find those and I can teach them individually. Well, when you start playing the game, if you pay attention, you'll see that you are set up to lose from the get-go as a teacher, as an administrator, and the students are set up to lose too. They have no say in what is going on there. We never figure out who they are. Everybody's doing the same dang thing at the same dang time. And as I started going, well, why? Meaning, why do we do school this way? And actually started going, where did this come from? Where did this whole model come from? Well, if you ask yourself that question and you actually care to go find the answer, you'll find out that it's been a system developed specifically to have an obedient population. Nothing more, nothing less. It is to get kids out of the home, take them away from their parents, and make them wards of the state that are obedient to what the state says. And I don't play that.
In Germany, right?
Yeah. Basically, the Germans were losing to Napoleon, and they were saying part of the reason they were losing is because our soldiers are thinking for themselves, and we don't want that. All right, so we had to build up a population of young people that were wildly obedient to the state, and so they developed this system. Horace Mann went over for the U.S. This is the bastardized version of it, but he goes over there, comes back, and essentially brings that to America. And Rockefeller goes, hell yes, like this is, I need a nation. His words, I need a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. And he put in the equivalent of $1.3 billion into making sure that this public school system produced a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. And people asked him, well, what are you going to teach them for 12 years? He says, I'll teach them a whole lot about nothing. And that's essentially what we do is we have a whole lot of information about nothing, and everybody's doing the same freaking thing. Again, so not accidental. And when you realize that, it's like, cool, man. Well, now that I know that, no way I'm going to work in that environment. I can't look at myself in the mirror and do that. And I'm sure as hell not sending my children into it.
Yeah, I always say that I don't know how I made it through school.
Mm-hmm.
It was easy for me, like getting through the tests,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the day-to-day stuff that was the hardest. Just sitting there and not getting in trouble. And I know for sure they would have medicated me if I would have gone through it right now.
For sure.
I I was lucky that my dad had he was going through higher education in child psychology at the same time that I was going through school. And so I think that saved me. Like, he started to understand more of it and was really weary of some of the stuff. But I think they tried to put me on meds, and he wouldn't do it. And I'm grateful, because I can't imagine just being zonked out. But yeah.
For sure. Well, I mean, Rockefeller started the pharmaceutical industry too. He made sure that went the way that went too. So it's not an accident that those things are married, at the hip. In there's the common things that at this point, 2 decades in, I get the same stuff from people over and over again. And one of those is, well, I went to school, I turned out fine. Okay, cool. So couple of problems with that. One, did you turn out fine because of school, or did you turn out fine in spite of school? Right? Because all three of us that are speaking right now, and anybody listening right now, we can go back and we can name people that crushed it in school and their life sucks now. We can name people that sucked in school and are crushing it now. So apparently it had nothing to do with school, right? So the people that turned out fine and they went to school, cool. Oh, hey, and also you're presupposing that school looks exactly the same now as it did when you grew up. It doesn't. Oh, and also you're assuming that fine is a worthy and lofty goal. Fine sucks.
Yeah.
If you say something's fine, Jason, how's your marriage? It's fine. Bro, what's up? We got to talk.
No. Or your wife's response. Is everything okay? It's fine.
It's fine.
Not.
You're in deep shit. Right. That's exactly right. Right. How's your relationship with your kids? It's fine. Bro, we need to talk.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of issues. With that.
No, I know just from our family, watching my daughter go from the public school system into something where she got to do more actual discovery, it changed just the way she behaved on a daily basis.
Sure.
So that was really impressive to me. And I'm not sure. I feel bad for waiting so long, but it also was really satisfying to see.
Yeah.
The change. And she's only done it for less than a year now, but it was just a really personality change, and she started taking more initiative, and you can kind of see her open up, and it's like, what? So 3 months out of this conveyor belt does this, and puts her kind of back in her own path, because she was at a kind of more of an open concept school before, and then when we moved to the city, she kind of got withdrawn in. So I definitely can see that a lot. But I know you have been interviewed up and down about this school stuff.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of hear the backstory of you and your faith, because I know that that's where I'm the most interested in. That's where we're coming at things. And I'm sure anybody can YouTube the rest of it, and they can find all your nuggets about the rest of this. So, and I'm not nearly qualified enough to talk to you about school and ask the questions. So,
quite all right. Yeah,
so,
quite all right.
You have how many kids, Matt?
What was the last question? I'm sorry, I missed that.
How many children do you have?
I've got 3.
3. Okay.
Sorry.
For some reason I've got 4, but I think in all the videos they're just running around, and so it's hard to keep track.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Your family seems so grounded when I've seen you guys interact, and you as a dad, I know that you're really intentional about that. What do you think has played more part of that?
My obsession with exactly that. I don't want the family to seem grounded. I want the family to be grounded, and everybody can see it, right? And so my obsession with optimizing whatever I can optimize as a parent. We have this weird thing in culture where it's okay to say you're a really good entrepreneur and prove it, right? And back it up and just say, look at my businesses and look at the money or whatever. Like, it's okay to say that. It's okay to say, I'm in really good physical condition, and you can show off your, your 6-pack abs, and you can, whatever. And people be like, dude, you're ripped. And you be like, oh, I work hard and I'm staying, whatever. It's not okay to be like, dude, I'm a really good parent. People are, oh, okay, well, it's not, you're so lucky, you're privileged or whatever. Like, no, I'm a freaking really good parent, and I've been wildly intentional. It doesn't mean I'm a perfect parent. That doesn't exist. And it doesn't mean that I haven't made mistakes. I just made them earlier, faster, paid attention to the patterns, had my own kids set me straight back on some things. And we've been wildly intentional about building a family that's got their stuff together. And again, I've got the honor of working with so many young people at this point. I've worked with thousands of young people and families before I ever even had my own kids. So I did come with somewhat of an advantage because I saw the patterns of the things that were working and the things that weren't, and the families that were solid and the families that weren't, and the families that pretended they were solid and they definitely weren't, right? Because you got a lot of those too. And so if anything else, what you see with our crew is what you freaking get. Like, that's it. And it's kind of funny, man. So I'm wearing this hat right now. So, you and I have a mutual friend in Ryan Mickler, and not this December, but the December past, we had a gentleman that flew a whole bunch of our families down to Mexico. Super kind individual. And he wanted to make sure he brought the whole family, though. So like, he flew Ryan down, but he flew Trish and the kids down too, right? He flew me down, but he flew Heather and my kids down. He flew Beaudreau down. He flew Lovell down. He flew Stephen Mansfield down, and Tanner Guzzi, and I mean Ray Care, and like, he flew all of us down to frickin' Mexico to hang out for the week, and he flew the families in. And I loved why he did it. He did it because he said, look, I know who you guys are from whatever you do, from social media or from your businesses or from whatever. And I want to see how you interact together. That's huge. But I want your families there, and I want to spend a week together, because you're not going to be able to fake it for a week, 24 hours a day with your family. If you suck as a dad, if you suck as a husband, it's good. We're going to see it. People are going to know. And I freaking love that, because I want people to know, like, our family is grounded, because we are obsessed with going, okay, what makes kids grounded? What makes adults grounded? What are the things families can implement so that they stay solid and connected? I've been diving into that for years, and we've been implementing it, and nothing is perfect, but damn, dude, it is. I love my family.
Now, was there a point in your life where you came to a crossroads, or you were against some trials and tribulations, because you have a vast knowledge of this by interviewing so many kids and so many families and so many men and women, like I said, before you had a family? But what started you on that path? Was there a point where you felt you were going down like a wrong path, and then something kind of turned you in that direction? Or is it just something from the beginning you knew, like, hey, this is something innately in me and I need to go this way?
Yeah, great question. A couple of things that really that I think predisposed me in a lot of good ways to have this. One, I didn't have the best family growing up, and I was not look, people have had it way worse. I know that. But I also had a very, very hard man for a father. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, to be a hard man if you can balance it with the vulnerable side. And, but he did not. So there was a lot that I took away as a young man going, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be very intentional, because we were afraid when he came home. We would rather him not be there. Right. I mean, that was the conversation my siblings and I had. I was like, oh, we'd rather him not be here. I didn't want my kids to have that. So I had a good example of what I didn't want to do. That was a big part. And I thought about it often. And then when I started dating my wife, and I got to the point where I'm like, man, this is vastly different. This is going to be the lady that I marry. We went to go see, what's that movie? Pursuit of Happiness, with Will Smith, right? That movie. And remember that scene, right, where he's like on the bathroom floor, man, in the BART station, right? And he's got the door closed, and he's got his boy right there. man, I'm not an emotional guy. I'm a very emotional person, but I don't cry very easily. That right there, I'm like, oh my God, something came over me, man. I'm like, I will die before my kids don't have all the opportunity in the world, but I know they can't be spoiled to the point of like they can't do things for themselves. But man, I've got to get this parenting thing figured out. We didn't have kids. I just knew like I'm gonna make sure I do, what I can do. So those are both two things. I know they're kind of like random and strange, but those are two big things where I was like, man, I'm gonna try to do this the right way. And then the last one too is we had our first daughter, and she was difficult, had some issues early on. She would go more than 24 hours at a time without sleeping, and would be screaming and crying for a lot of it. And so outside of somebody who's got special, she's perfectly fine, healthy, thriving, crushing life now. But outside of any infants that, having special needs, I never saw a baby that hard. So we struggled for a couple of years. And I remember popping her on the butt when she was 2. And she's like, Dad, you could have just talked, she was crying. And she's like, Dad, you could have just talked to me and told me what you wanted, and I would have done it. You didn't have to hit me. I was like, oh,
Wow.
just freaking crushed me. And
That's
it was like, man, you know what? I think she's right. And I'm going to go ahead and shift this last little bit too, because I grew up in what a lot of us did, like you've got to be disciplined, and you got to be disciplined, and you got to be disciplined by the parents. The parents are supposed to discipline the child. And we take a look at, biblical principles and go, we got to discipline the child. I think we take it out of context. And so now when people ask me, how do you discipline your kids? I always tell them, I teach them to be disciplined humans. That's a very different thing. And at this point, I don't have to, I don't have to do anything physical to my kids. I don't even have to yell at my kids. We just have certain standards that we're all going to hit. And if we're not hitting those standards, we aren't hitting those standards, then other people in the family have the ability to respectfully reach out and correct them. And when I say we, what I mean is, yes, I can correct my children. We have a family contract. You don't hit the contract, hey, I can point tangibly. Look, we've agreed. We're going to do this. You're not doing this. So what do we need to do? I can calmly correct. There's power though, because if I don't adhere to the contract and my kids come to me respectfully because I'm leading the family and they go, Dad, rule number 6 is no complaining, fix it. You kind of sound like you're complaining without a solution. Like, what is the solution? And I have to go, you're right. Okay. Do I need to be quiet about this, or do I need to find a solution to this? Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Right. So now they believe me because I'm not being hypocritical. It's not do as I say, not as I do. It's no, this is how we all do it.
there's a huge amount of respect that comes from that.
A huge amount of respect, right? Both ways.
Yeah.
So they know that if I say something, I mean it.
Yeah.
That if we have decided as a family, this is what we're going to do, and they're missing the mark, that I can point them. Part of my job is to point them back to where to hit the mark. Mm-hmm. And they go, okay, got it. Cool. Sounds good. Because they know they have the right to do that as well. They know we're all on this mission together. They know I want the best things for them, and they've seen the fruits of it. We'll revisit when something good happens. We'll see. So remember how I was saying this? This is why, right? You did this. Here was the pattern, and here's why the good outcome, right? And so we'll use these, and we'll talk about stories, and we'll point to we'll continue to have this heroic thinking conversations daily, so that those things just hit, man.
How much attention did you put in the beginning of their lives on faith, and how do you do that now?
That is a pursuit of God. So for me, it's been leading by my example of my own pursuit, which then leads them to. So what I tell people is, the best way to ensure your young person has a great education is for you to continuously increase your own and just bring them along. Right. So recently in the the brotherhood for Apogee, right, we've been talking about the financial system, been talking about the financial game, talking about the fact that 99% of the people in our country operate in the 1040 tax system because they don't even know that there is a second tax system that is fully legal in this country. It's called the 1041 system. It was set up specifically by people like Rockefeller, but the thing is, it's available to everybody. You don't have to be independently wealthy to utilize this, right? But there's a certain way you've got to structure things. And when you do that, you are not subject to the same tax laws as people in the 1040 system. It is a huge piece of knowledge and education. Well, I didn't always know that, but I've known it for the last few years. And once I knew that, then I had to start shifting how we did our own finances, what we did with our businesses, right? I was an entrepreneur at that point, so I had to start shifting all those things. So as I'm shifting it, and as I'm learning this and changing my own mind on how cash flow works in our family, I just simply brought them along. Did they need to understand every single bit of it? No, they can't even really conceptually, especially my little ones, right? Like they can't. But I'm exposing them to this. I'm exposing them to my own growth, and the conversations that we have now are based on that, right? So it's the same thing. As I continue to grow and pursue who God is and dive in, and we have these conversations, we have them as a family. We celebrate these things as a family. We have these conversations as a family. We talk to other human beings about it, and we continue to dive in as a family. There is an actual pursuit that happens. Yisrael, right, means to contend with and to strive with God. So we continue to contend with and strive with. We're playing an infinite game that you can't fully win. You'll never understand everything about him. You won't. But too many people stop there and go, since we won't understand, I'll just, hey, pastor, you tell me what I need to do since we won't understand anything anyways. You just let me know what to do. I'll come on Sunday. You tell me, what part I need to hear, and then we'll go on. And it's crazy. People stop pursuing, but then they say the trendy things like relationship over religion. Cool, man. When's the last time relationship with your wife looked like, I don't actually listen to anything you say, but when I need something, I'm just going to go tell you something, and I'm going to say things. Oh, Heather, I need Heather. Hey, Heather, I need to get this, Heather, and dear Heather. And that we don't have a relationship with anybody else like that, but we pretend because church has shown us to do it like this, right? So that's just not the way we roll, man. We want to actually listen to what he says to the best of our ability and keep pursuing.
Well, you had made a point a second ago about the pastor's interpretation of it. I think that's one of the things that I struggle with in actually finding a brick and mortar church to go to. Mm-hmm. I was raised Catholic, went through, communion, catechism, confirmation, all that stuff. Went to Sunday school for years. And it was always so subjective. Like you went to one church, it's one interpretation, another church, another interpretation. It's like, well, there's no consistency in it. Which do I believe?
Right.
What's your rationale as to why I should believe this as opposed to what someone else is saying?
Right.
I think so. That's one of the biggest things that I've struggled with. And hearing you say that right now, it's just like that kind of hits the nail on the head of why can't we just collectively get on the same page?
I mean, so I love that you're looking and you're seeing patterns, right? And so I grew up Catholic as well, right? I call it diet Catholic. It was like we just went on the holidays, right? You just go on the Catholic holidays. That's it.
Robin Williams had a joke about that once. Catholic, like, what was it?
Oh, did he?
He did a stand-up thing. I'm gonna have to look it up. I know it's like poor right now. When you said Catholic light, that just made me think about him.
That's funny. Okay, yeah. If you find it, man, shoot it over to me. I'd love to see that. That's awesome. But there was not like I didn't know anything. And so I was late 19, and I started getting to the point where I'm like, okay, well, I got to see is there a God first and foremost? Like I want to start there. Does he exist? And if he does, well, why is it so different? Why do Catholics say one thing? Why do Seventh-day Adventists say another thing? The Watchtower organization says this. LDS says this. You got the Protestants who say this. You got the Jews who say this, and they're basing some things on the Talmud here. And you got the people that are reading the Quran over here, and they're saying things like they can't all be right, man. Maybe there's elements that are, but they can't all be, because if God exists, and I'm pretty sure he's saying one thing, and we're supposed to kind of know what that is, right? So I went down the rabbit holes of, dude, I'm going to read all of it.
Yeah.
And see where I line up. Like, what can I just go, okay, this one, no, that doesn't make sense. Right. And so just started chopping things out one by one. And ultimately, really the last 10 years, we've been diving into the oldest manuscripts that we can find, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, taking a look straight from the Hebrew itself, and doing my best, the best of my ability to translate, and working with other people who are doing that as well. And we come together and it's like a conversation, man. It's okay, how did you translate this? How did I translate this? What do the different versions of the Bible say? Because it's usually different. And so, okay, well, then what's the context around this then? What is going on in the world? What is going on in this area here? And how does that connect to other things? Like, we actually try to think through it. More often than not, I find out that I'm wrong about a lot of stuff, right? Which is great. I'm okay with being wrong, because I'll go back and change that's okay, because I'm pursuing who he is.
Yeah.
That's all. That's what I want to do.
Well, it's better to be proven wrong, and that way you can have something firm to believe in later on.
That's it, man. I want to get past the faith part. I want to, again, I want to have faith in the things that I don't know, but I want to know. I think we're able to know certain things too, and that's why I like that, the thought of knowing more than anything. And I think faith is another word that gets bastardized by the church. And, I use it from a relationship context. You want to have faith that your wife is not cheating on you, or do you want to know? I want to know.
That's what it is. And that's what the tattoo in Latin is on my arm here. It says, faith is to believe what you do not see. The reward of that faith is to see what you believe.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's kind of been like, if you believe long enough, you want that proof.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So you started with other texts, like other religious texts, and you read what, all of them?
I mean, I don't think I've read every religious text under the sun, but I've read the Quran. I've read the Book of Mormon. I've read the Pearl of Great Price. I've read everything by the Watchtower, and taking a look at their versions of, the versions of the Bible. I read the Talmud. I read started going down all of those rabbit holes.
Such an educator's way to go too. It's like, you're just like, I got to know all of it, and then I'll figure out what's right. I think it's cool though. I wish that I would have started there just so I could understand more of it. But as I've gotten older and started to look into other things just to understand them, it has a way of concreting what I already understood. I'm not sure exactly. It's like, if you understand something else, then you can understand why it's not what you believe,
right?
Which is an interesting, I don't know why that makes so much sense, but it does.
Yeah, it was, really thankful for that. I don't have any desire to really go back and read most of those texts anymore. At this point, I'm really content with how much time I know I will have to spend just going through on the Dead Sea Scrolls themselves, and doing that and thinking through that whole thing, because there are things that come up that are just that the church doesn't talk about. And I've taken, for better or for worse, man, I've taken some of these translations, and I've gone to pastors of some of the biggest churches in California, which by default actually made them some of the biggest churches in America. And I've said, look, man, look what I found here. Look at this here. Like, this is a little different than what you get in any translation that I've seen. Right. So I've got a lot of people that are coming to the same conclusion on this right here, man, but it's different than this. What do you think about this? And the response, the majority of the time, taking it to pastors, was, I have no idea. I wasn't taught anything about this, so I don't know. That's the majority. And then on 2 occasions, there was the, yeah, I mean, you're on the right track, but think about what would happen if we said that in church. The pews would empty. The seats would empty. Like, we wouldn't get the same, and man, there's no part of me that rolls like that.
What's an example of that you found that you felt like was challenging to the narrative?
Well, there's there's a good amount. So if you go back into the Dead Sea Scrolls, you go back, take a look. Well, God uses his name 7,000 times, not 6,842, not 7,014. He uses his name 7,000 times. You will not find a single Bible that has his name. None. Nobody writes it. To me, that's a problem. That in of itself, he says, I am, and he has his name. It is here. Don't ever call anything other than this. This is my name. I want you to call me this. I want you to use this. Say this. You look at any translation, and what do they translate it to? They translate it to Lord, right? Big capital Lord. Well, Hebrew, if I said you're the son of Baal, does that sound good to you, right? Like you take a look at Baal is usually a term used for the enemy. Well, Baal in Hebrew means Lord. So we have actually taken out his name that he says specifically 7,000 times, here's who I am. And we've taken it out of every version of the Bible, and we've replaced it with a title that he doesn't actually even really dig.
So he wants to refer to himself as God.
God's a title, but he actually says, here's my name, use my name. And I'm not making this up. That's what's written.
What does he refer to himself as 7,000 times?
It says, my name is Yahweh, right? Or what people call Yahweh, but it's more pronounced. Yahweh is we go Torah and Judah and all these. So like, my name is, so when you so that in of itself is an interesting thing that I think is worth looking at and discussing. We talk about, we talk about the Father, the Son, and the
Holy Spirit.
Right. So the more accurate translation is the set apart spirit, which is great. Gives us a little bit more insight, right? We're called to be set apart. So it's set apart spirit. One of the interesting things is, again, this isn't me. I didn't write this book. I didn't write this, right? But when I say it, people are like, you are the enemy. I didn't write it. I'm just telling you what is written. Go look for yourself. But the set apart spirit, the Ruach Kodesh, is unavoidably feminine. Try going to the Catholic Church and saying that it's not three male figures in a triune. Unavoidably feminine.
So it'd be Father, Son, and then
the Heavenly Mother. It's the maternal side of God, the paternal side, the maternal side. Ruach Kodesh is unavoidably feminine. I didn't make the rules. Why? Go look for yourself.
Do you think there's so much opposition because people are so concrete in their faith that if you change something like that, it would shake their entire foundation? And the flip side of that is church is also a business. So if you went and said that, not many people would be coming through your front door for business.
Which is exactly what the pastors said to me.
Really?
I mean, if that's such a, I mean, I'm thinking of it differently than most people, but I feel like that's if your faith is that brittle,
agreed,
that changing
agreed,
a characteristic of something,
agreed,
it just doesn't make sense. Like, why would that destroy your whole faith?
Oh, but if you've ever gone to a Catholic church, like I went to a predominantly Hispanic Catholic church,
yeah.
And if you said anything otherwise to that, I mean, even my own grandmother, I mean, for saying the Our Father wrong, we would get reprimanded.
For sure.
There were nuns that I went to Sunday school with, and they had the ruler, and they would smack your hands, and it was just like 100%. You follow that road that they're teaching you to go down, and if you or think for yourself for a moment, even as a child,
guaranteed,
you're sinning. That's sinning. Go sit in the corner.
That's right.
I guess in my head, it's always been like the Holy Spirit as a concept to me was never conceptualized gender specific. Like it was
right. Yeah.
It was spirit. Like in my head, as the Holy Spirit was it was the way God explained things to you and gave you a feeling to understand what was going on and showed you right from wrong. And it was a spirit in you, but it wasn't something it didn't matter to me because in my head it wasn't male or female. So it's
sure,
maybe I contextualize it differently, right?
sure,
Because the way
sure.
I've grown, like I started in Catholic church, but like one Christmas every 2-3 years we'd go to a Catholic church, and then I found a like Christian church, like non-denominational later. So maybe that's part of it, but I guess that was never it was never gender specific. So I'm like, I'm not understanding why this is such a big deal.
Yeah.
But it's
And
funny.
again, those are just a couple little things, where it's like, okay, man, there's a lot more to a lot of things that it's like, this actually is pretty freaking cool. It's pretty interesting.
That's
You just get to
really,
learn more,
that is like,
you know?
seriously, that's making me
And
think.
and then, you've got the book. So, so hallelujah,
Yeah.
hallelujah, right? The book of Isaiah,
Uh,
yeah, right? The book of Jeremiah,
yeah.
yeah, right? Like his name is woven. Yah is the short version of Yahweh. His name is woven all throughout, even in the bastardized versions, right? Isaiah is really Yasha, Yah. Jeremiah is Yirmiyahu. Like it's just it, but it's hallelujah is to shine the light of Yahweh. Like his name is littered in all these other things, but we've actually removed it when it was actually written. So just that, again, there's a lot of little things like that look, man, you decide if it's important or not. I want to go with, what did he say? And how close can I get to that?
Yeah, our church, they use that name in certain sermons and in certain songs, but it's not super specific. But then there's certain churches, like I've never been to a Catholic church and heard that name at all.
Oh, no, it was actually banned by the Catholic Church, by the Roman Catholic Church.
Yeah. So
it's banned.
Like we have Christian, like a brand, like a streetwear brand that does like Christian stuff. And so we have a couple shirts and stuff that say it, but I didn't understand quite the background to it. I knew that it was like one of the original ways to say it, but I didn't understand the entire thing. So it's shines a cool light. Now I'm going to have a little bit more deeper understanding. I'm going to actually appreciate it a little bit more. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
How did you start down the path of the Dead Sea Scrolls? And then you went about learning Hebrew to understand this? Like,
yeah.
Undertaking.
Oh, for sure. And I still suck at it.
I know. I'm thinking, like, did he have somebody interpret this? Like,
I'm having a hard enough time trying to learn how to speak Spanish, and my wife is in the house with me, able to practice with me daily.
Let's be honest, English is hard for you.
That's true.
Dude, English is hard for me. So you're good. You're not alone. You're not alone, man. This is just, for better or for worse, man, curiosity is something I've always had. So I don't remember exactly what I was reading, but it was on actually a health related site. We were doing a deep dive into just like human health and just kind of, again, trying to absorb as much information as I could. When my daughters were very, very young, I may have just had, I actually just had one at the time. So diving into this, and somebody said in a comment section on a site, because somebody said something about, Jesus this or something. Somebody was like, yeah, keep using that name, but that wasn't his name. Don't you think that's weird? And I'm like, what are they talking about? And then they're like, look up when did the letter J come into existence? Just Google it. So and they're talking, it was somebody else arguing in a comment section. So I Googled, when did the letter J come into an existence? And so you're like looking at the 11th century and it's like, wait a second. Okay. So if there was no J, this human, nobody actually in his entire life walked up to him and said, hey, Jesus, what's up? Nobody ever said that. Like, that's actually not. So I went, man, that's kind of crazy. Like, you don't think about that. Nobody actually, there's literally no way that was his actual name. So then what was his name? Like, what did he go? Like, what was it then? And you go, okay, it's Yahusha. Okay, what does Yahusha mean? It means Yahweh saving us. I'm like, what? Who is this? Like, what is this? What language is this? And that brought me down like this rabbit hole of finding these forums and talking to people. And so, that's over a decade ago. And so at this point, I'm connected with a good number of people from around the world. There is no church related to it. There's nobody asking for money for it. There's one gentleman in particular who has created a number of books as he's diving down this rabbit hole and like insights and stuff, and he will not take any money for it. Zero, zip, zilch. Makes no money for it, pays for the books himself for the creation, of them. And so we've just got a bunch of us, man, that are connecting on this and just, again, deep dive. We're looking at the same scripts as everybody else.
Two things. One, write a book about all this stuff so I can buy it.
Yeah. Well, I'd actually send you his, because he's doing a great job. And this is his full-time job.
Yeah, I would love to dive into that more, because that just makes it so much more interesting.
It's so interesting, man.
Solidifying like your faith, like, because it's not the norm. It's like, hey, this is the truth, and I can, correlate more with this than what you're subjectively telling me for the last Sunday for 42 years.
Yeah,
it's layers out from in between, like the actual communication from God, right, and all these different interpretations.
Yeah,
you're getting further to it, and it makes it more tangible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see how that wouldn't strengthen your faith. So I think it's cool that that's the way that you went about it. I definitely see the value in it. My thought would be like, how am I going to interpret this? And then, but now with everything out there, I'm sure that there's
so many tools. There's so many tools, man. We've had a couple of the brothers in the brotherhood that have been like, hey man, shoot me over like, what is this stuff? I'll shoot over like 20 different reference points. I mean, there's, between the logo stuff and the various interlinears and, there's sites where you can go pull the pictures of the Dead Sea Scrolls themselves, but then you can go through and do the logo stuff, and you can do the interlinears, and you can check it with Strong's Concordance, and you can kind of triangulate. It still takes me forever. It'll take me weeks to really get through one verse, and really break it down. Because the beauty, once you start seeing, in Hebrew, is that it's words. There's only a couple thousand Hebrew words, right? It's far less words, or maybe like 6,000, maybe, I think somewhere around there, which is far less than the English language. But the beauty is, one word has not just the potential for multiple meanings, but a lot of times it's a yes and, where it actually means this and this and this all simultaneously. So it just provides so much more richness to the sentences as you read it, because you can extrapolate so much more information from it. And the beauty of Hebrew is there's no past tense, there's no future tense. Everything is present tense. And it's how God talks about how he operates. He doesn't, that's why free will is a real thing, because he's not preordaining you to do this or that. And he's not even speaking prophetically about what's going to happen in the future. He's saying he's like a beam of light that it just exists for all time. So he is able to, from the seventh dimension being, to be able to look at past, present, and future as if they're all happening at the same time. So it's not prophecy. He's just reporting what he already saw. Everybody's got free will. He's reporting the whole thing. Hebrew is that tense. It just always is. And it's fascinating.
If you would have told me today I would be speaking to someone that's interpreting Dead Sea Scrolls, I'd be like, nah, that's not happening.
That's not what we're doing. I know, man.
This is insane and ridiculously interesting. How do you, knowing all this now, because I know how they teach you how to pray when you're going, Sunday school.
Yeah.
How do you pray now as opposed to then? Like, what do you internally, when you say, like, you're supposed to, we'll just say Catholicism, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, get on your knees, clench your hands, start praying, say the Our Father. Now, I was told in an acronym, you pray, you pray the Our Father, you repent, you ask, and then you yield to his will.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of been my point of reference throughout my life, for like how I even speak to God. How do you pray to God when you're, say, asking him for something, or how do you just pray on a daily basis? Like, how do you speak to him?
Isn't that funny though, that we're like, how do you pray? How do you ask him for stuff?
No, I mean, it's because,
and I'm not knocking you.
No, it's
No,
true. I mean, you
it's
should have more of
interesting.
like, you should talk to God every day, but let's be honest, the majority of people only go to God when they need something. There's a song by
Right.
Jelly Roll called God, I need a favor.
Yeah.
It talks
Jelly
about
roll.
him just going
Yeah.
to God
Totally.
when you need something. Now, I've learned not to do that over the years because I'm going to hear what he's saying to me. But how do you go about, because we can't do it all on our own. So how do you go about asking God for something or
But isn't that, but see, look, listen, how do you go about asking your wife for everything? How do you go about asking your wife? How do you go about asking your wife for what you need? How do you go about asking your wife for what you need? How do you go about asking your wife for what you need? If you said that over and over again, at what point do you stop thinking, man, there's no relationship. This guy just thinks his wife is a freaking genie in a bottle, right?
yeah.
Relationship means there's two ways going on. One of the biggest things that we don't do is shut up and listen. We don't listen, right? And that doesn't mean we're going to hear things audibly. It means he is speaking to us. He's got these words here. Oh my, I need to spend 90% of my time reading this and thinking about this versus asking him for freaking anything because he's already seen the choices I've made anyways. And he knows he's just like he's already seen the future version of me because he doesn't exist in this time that I'm locked in right now as this third dimensional being. Like he doesn't see it that way. So it's not as much about that. And what's interesting is this would be something that would go on the whole thing. This will piss everybody off, but he does not ask us to pray. I'm not saying don't. And I'll be like, yeah, dude, what is going on? I'm more like the crazy guy on Braveheart, right? That's always just like, yes, I hear you, whatever. Like I'm more like that, right? Where I'll just kind of like whatever, and I'm having the conversation, but I know usually I need to shut up and go like this. I don't go and like necessarily ask. Sometimes I'll be like, man, help me out. Like, all right, let's rock and roll. I mean, there's a little bit of that, but I'm not going and specifically going, hey, I need to ask you for this, ask you for this, ask you for this, ask you for this. I want to listen to what you have to say. And then I want to engage the way you're telling me to engage, because he tells us in his instructions that if you engage with me during these times in this way, he doesn't say, come pray to me. He says, if you engage with me in these times, meet me in the times that I want to meet, man, I'm going to empower you and I will always be there to take care of you. You won't have to fear anything.
So what do you do if you, I mean, we all internally, so are you saying to not have any internal questions for God that you need answered? Just no.
Oh, I'm not saying that there's no internal. I have millions of questions. The more I go down this, the more I learn one thing. I've got a million questions.
Yeah.
But if you wrote down the answers already, if I said, hey man, I've got everything you need right here, and you're like, I'm not going to read this. I'm not going to read this. I just want to ask you, and I'm going to wait until you, I mean, do we want that relationship? Are we really looking? Are we really pursuing?
I see what you're saying.
One of the things that my counselor had told me, he's a Christian counselor, he had told me, he's like, it's about having conversations, less of praying, right? And he pointed me to this movie. It's an old John Wayne movie, but the guy, he's lost in the desert, and he actually just like, as he's like random, like just randomly talk to God, but like just about random stuff, like, and it's really entertaining. Like every once in a while, he'll be like, "Hey, been 4 days without water. Just thought I'd mention it." But
Thought I'd
like,
throw it out there.
there's some stuff like that. But it's like just having a conversation with him. And it's such a weird way to think after you've been brought up in the rest of it, right? Because you've got, you're kind of almost brainwashed into it.
You're exactly what you are. It's like, no, you've got to pray this specific thing in this specific way. Even in a so like I'm in the Catholic Church, right? You and I know it's like, no, you say, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily. Like you know exactly what to say and exactly how to say it. Then you go into the Protestant side and you don't do that necessarily, but it's okay, every head bowed and eyes closed, and Lord, thank you, Lord, for you, Lord, being Lord. Like you talk so weird. You don't talk to any other person like that, but you're going to talk to God like that. Why? Because the church told you to, not because of him. And again, look, I'm not going to knock the way people want to communicate with him. That's not my role. I have no desire to do that for anybody. But what I think is super interesting, and I've seen it for myself, and I've actually asked as I've been preaching on a Sunday morning, there are people who will pray, 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 pray. And I say, have you ever actually read even just this version of the Bible? Never mind the Dead Sea Scroll version. Have you finished this? And it's like, I've read some of it. I've read.
What version of the Bible do you read on a daily basis? Or
No, the Dead Sea Scrolls.
yeah,
But
Yeah.
you're saying like people go to
Yeah.
people go to a regular church
because I can't read the Dead Sea Scroll.
No, but people go to a regular church and they haven't, and they're asking, they're praying, but they've never even read the whole Bible.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
Whatever Bible they have at that church, right? That's what you're saying.
That's exactly right. So I was preaching a message, man, and I said, so we were in a Christian church, and I said, okay, how many of you, and I held up I think it was like an NIV, right? And so I said, how many of you believe every single word, in this book? Every hand, every single hand. I'm like, all right, cool. This is the Quran right here. How many of you do not believe this book at all? Every single freaking hand. Cool. And then I took a book that was like Teens and Screens or something like that, right? It was like a book on like teenagers with technology. And I'm like, how many of you believe this book right here, Teens and Screens by whatever? And people were like, I'm confused. I'm like, why are you guys confused about this? They're like, well, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say on that. Why don't you know what to say about this particular book right here? Well, we've never read it. I don't know exactly. There's probably some good stuff in there. Cool. We've never read it. Why did you all know to raise your hand for this one? And you all knew to raise your hand that you don't believe this one. How many of you have read the Quran? None. But they were all very quick to say they disagreed with everything in the book. How many of you have read this entire Bible? It was not even half. But all the hands had gone up when I said, do you believe every word? You haven't read it. So we're playing a game.
Yeah.
Right? Like at some point, I want people to realize where they're playing a freaking game. Because for me, again, I don't roll with hypocrisy. What you see from me is what you get 24 hours of every freaking day. Period. I will not live in hypocrisy. So that's a part of that. I will tell you very quickly what I think I know about who God is and all the things that I know I don't know. But I'm not going to pretend just because there's an organization that told me to, or because my mom raised me that way, or because if I say this thing over here and just keep my thoughts to myself, everybody over here will like me. I don't roll like that.
Where do you think those changes come from?
The changes in the Bible, the translations.
Yeah.
There's been different groups, man. There's been, from what I can tell, there's been the Masoretes. They're the Roman Catholic Church has had a good run at it. We've partnered with, we being like the church has partnered with occultists to write different versions of it. People talk about was the King James Version was predominantly written by Sir Francis Bacon, who was an occultist.
I guess what I'm saying, do you think that it was potentially intentional, or do you think, because in my head I'm thinking a big part of it could come from how many, you're saying like Hebrew words, right, have all these different contextual meanings.
Yeah. But some of the things that have been translated,
no, I understand.
You can't possibly get the meaning that is written from any possible word over here. Like there are some things that are very clearly like,
so
man, that's not the same at all.
I mean, there's definitely I've definitely seen that in some contextual things as I've learned about different churches. And so I definitely can believe it, right? It's not like, oh, well, the Catholics did it, but this church over here never did it. Like they are.
Oh no,
I definitely can see it. It's just like until you get into it, I'm sure it's hard to even contextualize it.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Kind of off subject with that. What do you feel is a good piece of advice for someone, in your opinion, to best serve their wife and their family from the man's point of view, from the husband and the father's point of view in the family?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I think there's a couple of I think there's a couple of things. And so I think it's a matter of how much, what do we prioritize? So first and foremost, we need to prioritize being the best version of ourselves. And as cheesy and as cliche as that sounds, that's a big deal. Now, people will take that at a very surface level, kind of a meme level, at this point, and go, okay, cool. So I need to make a lot of money. I need to get ripped. I need to get cool, man. Those things are good. But what is the best possible version of yourself from a mental standpoint? How do you show up in the household every day? How can you lead with a sense of peace and of calmness and of an authority that doesn't demand respect, but it earns it, and then it gives it as well, so that you're truly leading by example, right? So in about 24 minutes, I'm going on IG Live with John Knox, Firefighters for Freedom. And we're going to be talking about leadership and what that means. Well, as the man of the house, your obligation is to lead. And what that means is you need to equip, you need to inspire, and you need to be able to eventually get out of the way. I don't want my kids having to live with me as 30 and 40-year-old adults. I have failed them if that's the case, right? I want them to be able to thrive, to function at an extraordinarily high level. I want them to still have a relationship with me, but I want them to be crushing it. So my first responsibility is to make sure that I am being the example of what a man is and what a man does. My son needs to see that for the example of what he needs to step into. My girls need to see that for the example of who they need to marry and what that needs to look like. So that's first and foremost, is I need to show up like that.
We talked about that for our daughters.
What's your definition of being that man?
Optimizing as much as I can while obsessing over who they are, so I can show up exactly who I need to be for them. So what I mean by that is this: on my side, I need to be able to optimize to the best of my ability the key areas of faith, right? What does it look like to be the spiritual leader? What does it look like to be the financial provider? What does it look like to be the emotional support for everybody? Like, what does it look? I need to be the tip-top guy for every single one of those the best I can. What we talk about in the brotherhood all the time is there's no such thing as perfection. We can't hit it. I can never be a perfect husband. I can never be a perfect father, but I don't stop because of that. I continue to pursue perfection. Perfection is always the standard. So I'm always moving towards that. I'm going to work to provide better. I'm going to work to be more emotionally available. I'm going to work to be more supportive, more inspirational. But part of the way I do that is working on me and my mindset. The other part is paying extreme attention to the people that are in my house. And what I mean by that is I need to know who my wife is, how she operates, how she thinks, what makes her happy, what makes her sad, what makes her worried. Like, I want to know every single bit of that. And I want to know every single bit of that for my kids too. And it's to the point like where I pay attention to that so much, where it's like, we'll be driving, there'll be something that, happens on the side of the road and a specific song goes on. And I go, because this happened and then this happened right here, my wife is going to automatically think of the one time when, and she's going to start to, and she'll be like, oh my gosh, you know what? I'm like, yeah, you just thought of the time 6 years ago when we were like, she's like, I freaking hate it that you do that. she's like, I hate it. I hate you. And that's what she's like, it's like some sort of psychic thing. And I'm like, man, it is nothing to do with that at all. This is the same 4-year-old kid that went, oh, I'm in the red group and we need the least amount of help reading. I pay attention to the patterns, man, so that I can be in front of whatever they need when they need it, before sometimes they even know they need it. And I do that for every single one of my kids too. All of them have the exact same father and a very different father, because they're very different people and they need me to show up in different ways for them. My job, it's the hardest job in the household, but it's supposed to be. I'm blessed to have that job, is to pay attention to them that hardcore, where I can be that support in ways that nobody else can, because I know them that well.
That is a great explanation and definitions. I think anybody listening, myself included, that's awesome. That's fantastic.
That's it.
How do you go about staying consistent? So one of the things that I've had the hardest time with through this path of trying to become the most optimized version of myself, right? And I've been walking down this path with both. I mean, I started with Ryan and we've talked, and then I've joined the Brotherhood, and we've done some different things
Mm.
and trying to go about this. In the hardest thing for me is it's gotten more consistent, right? But I see people that, well, I guess you only see what you see, but you understand that you know that there's people out there that are definitely more consistent than you, and or I do, right? How have you gone about staying consistent in these small things every day when you get like the things in life just happen, right? Or there's some days where I just, I feel like I'm in a fog and I'm like, crap, like it's 4 o'clock and I got work done at work, but what about my goals? Like, what have I done to this today? Like, it's
Yeah.
just gotten away from me, and then
Yeah.
that's defeating in itself, right? And there's some different things that I do for that, but I'm curious what, like, you also have a ton of ability to set your own schedule. And so I know that for me is even harder sometimes. Like I have a harder time keeping the structure when I have a full day where I'm like, I have nothing that I have to do today, but
Sure.
these are the things I want to do today.
Sure.
And that fog, right? That can sink in a lot when there's no structure there too.
Totally. Well, and I've been on, and I've been on both sides of that, right? I mean, so do I get to control my own schedule now? I do. And I'm very, very grateful for that. I'm very thankful for that. I also had a period of time where I worked 7 days a week for 7 years straight with multiple jobs, building that out to get to the point where I could then control my own schedule. Prior to that, I had no control over my schedule because I worked for somebody else too and was at the mercy of what was needed there. And I had my entire life. So I've been on every point of this spectrum to understand that. When you're talking about the consistency, when you're getting hit with things like the fog, I'm not immune to it. I've definitely gotten hit with that. But here comes that curiosity again. I always went, why? Why am I tired right now? Is this a product of my physical body where it's like there's something I'm doing food wise? So I need to experiment food wise. Is it because of the type of workout I'm doing? How early I worked out? How late I worked out? Could that be the thing? Is it a sleep thing? Is it a mental energy thing where I'm mentally drained by something because I don't love it and I'm not feeling recharged? Like these are the conversations that go on in my mind all the time. And they have since I was young. So I'm always analyzing my own responses to things to go, okay, well, what is the best version of this for me? How does my body respond well to this? How does my mind respond to this? What are the things that I get really excited about and I could do this forever? What are the things that I know are going to be mentally draining for me? So I need to not schedule too much crazy mental draining stuff around that, right? Like it's been this constant battle of analyzing myself. And what sucks is that's the truth. And people will hear it and go, well, shit, I'm out. Too much work for me. Hey, then deal with the fact that you hate your fog.
Yeah.
Like then suck it up, right? Like you can't have both. Again, rule number 6 in our house is no complaining, fix it. If you don't like it, do the work to fix it. So at this point, I've gotten myself consistent enough because I understand a little bit how I operate. I set up the alter ego when we did that first month. Like that's not accidental. I step into these various roles that I have to play. And for me, the consistency is a life or death thing, man. Like, how are you consistent on stuff? I don't know. I've never cheated on my wife. And people will see that as normal. So what does that mean? It means I have consistently, we've been together for 18 years. So I consistently have only gone to her for 18 years. Cool. Because that's faithful to that, right? Well, guess what? I'm going to do the same thing for my health. I'm not going to cheat on my health because I feel like that's cheating on me. That's cheating on her because I'm not showing up as my best version. So I don't cheat on my diet. So I'm consistent. I feel like work is the same thing. You've been here since January 1 in the Brotherhood, right? What is today? Today's June 1st. So 6 months. Well, if you go back into workplace, just workplace alone, where the platform where we operate, you'll see that's 180 days. There's not been a day that's gone by that I haven't put at least something out there for you, a video in almost all of them, or at least a couple articles or something in almost all, because for me, it's too important. I'm not gonna be unfaithful to the men that I get the opportunity to serve. I just won't do it.
So it sounds like from a very early age, your mental diet and accountability have been huge. Like
The
every day.
pattern recognition has been huge.
Yeah.
The self-accountability, all accountability is self-accountability, all education is self-education. So the accountability side, really not until I was in my 20s where I really had that dialed in. The pattern recognition, I always had dialed in, but I was just as, I mean, I loved girls and I loved to fight. I did a lot of really, really stupid stuff that I was a moron in a lot of ways, right? And I just leaned into it. I knew what I was doing was stupid, but I just leaned into it. So there was plenty of that. The accountability came, I finally decided to grow up with her.
Yeah. That's your wife. That's how you beat me to it. Go ahead.
So that's what I was going to ask you when that change happened. But
Sure.
I think so. We've had this consistent theme
Since day one.
in almost every, if not every interview that we've done, where we talk to men and we're like, okay, so where did like at some point the women that we bring into our lives, if you pick a high quality woman, she will bring the high quality out of you.
She's your catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Big time. And it was night and day.
Yeah, same.
Night and day. And I had so many, this is a moron douchebag. This is the points to it points to the douchebag that I was. I had so many to compare her against that I was like, this is not even in the frickin' same league, man.
Yeah.
But then I also, as I got to know her, I got to know her family too. And I also saw a father figure that was very different than any father figure I ever saw too, right? So there was a bonus there. I'm like, wait, I really, he brings a lot to the table that I definitely never saw as a father. And I see how she admires and respects him too. And I'm like, man, there's a lot of really good stuff going on here.
You're
so
like the same. Same for me.
Awesome.
Her, never met anyone like her.
Yep.
And her kids and her family and her sisters, but then to meet her dad, like you said, nothing I had ever experienced in my own life.
Yep.
A family connection, a father figure that everybody loves and respects. It was just amazing. And that just, I don't want to say sweetens the deal, but you're more attracted to it.
Of course.
Not only have I found her, but she's got all these things come along with her. Like, this is everything that I was lacking in my life or wanted.
Yes.
Here. And that even drives you more to get through all your crap and
For
peel
sure.
your layers and be like, I cannot be in these people's existence.
For sure. For sure. Right. I mean, like it's not even close. So that made it extraordinarily. And when I say easy, it makes it easy to get consistent on things, right? It's not like we didn't have hard times. We had, I remember us being really, really poor as we started out. I remember her saying one time, oh my gosh, are we ever going to get to the point where we have some money? And I remember her just saying that. She wasn't complaining. She just kind of said it like that. I wrote it down, man. I put it in my wallet. I'm like, I don't ever want to have my wife say that or fear this. I've got to get to work on this. And part of getting to work on that, man, I left a 6-figure job right after we had our first baby, living in El Dorado Hills, California, which you guys are familiar with, to go take on a job as she stopped hers to take care of our child. And I made $31,000 that year. Ooh. Because I knew it was the step we needed to take so that I could do the things that I wanted to be able to do for our family. And she was down. She was game. She trusted me. We had built enough in there even after that conversation, but I knew I had to do that. Right. So we had plenty of ridiculously tough things to go through, but she was down.
That's rough. I mean, that's the faith though, right? I just am in awe of the things that at the end of the day, God has put in my life, in Nick's life, in all the men that we've talked to in their life. And it's like, there's no way to deny that he knows exactly what we need. has that foresight, right? Because
Yeah.
I know that with the people that he put into our lives, people that he put in yours, right?
Hmm.
It's always so obvious that there's a meaning and a plan to it. And so
It's awesome.
It sounds like.
yeah, well, it's almost the same.
Yeah.
So I know you got another engagement here soon, so we'll let you go. But I just want to thank you again for hopping on and chatting with us, man. It's so good to get to talk to you about stuff, and I love kind of going down these rabbit holes. So
Me
I love
too.
it.
Me
Matt,
too.
pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for doing this with Jason and I. I look forward to talking to you in the future. Please send Jason some of those links about some of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
sure.
I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah.
And just thanks for being here. And to everyone watching, follow Matt. He's got a lot of great things to say. He's doing some amazing things. And
Matt, you want to shout out the couple things you're doing, and we'll leave.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Well, and before I do that, man, thank you guys for the honor of being asked, but you guys do a really good job too, which is, I get the what a freaking honor to be asked to do these things, and I get to do 5, 6, 7 of these a week usually, right? What a freaking honor, because people want to hear what a knucklehead has to say about anything. Really, truly, it's like, dude, I don't deserve that, right? But you guys do a really good job as well, and that makes it a whole lot of, just makes it more fun. Plus, I got nothing but love for Jason, and again, now we're friends now as well, Nick. So, yeah, man, absolutely. So, the big thing for us right now is what we're doing with Apogee Strong, man. We're gonna redo the whole website, but it's the Apogee Strong. We've got the young men's program, we got the men's program. We just did our first focus group so we can do something for the ladies. By we, Tim and I will not be running that. That'll be a partner. We know we're not the ladies to run that. So we'll partner with good women for it. And we've got the 501c3, the foundation there as well, where we can help scholarship young men. We can bring young men into these live events where we can pour into them, give them roadmaps to go back into their communities and to succeed. So those are all the things we're working on right now, man. It's a blessing to do it every day.
All right. Well, thanks very much for being here. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Until next time,
Be a savage,
be a servant.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you like this at all, if you got any info, or you just like us going back and forth, making each other look stupid, just share with one person.
We are on podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
And we will drop episodes every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
And until next time,
be a savage,
be a servant.